Oh, well, here, just use mine. Or did I?
Welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. It is Thursday, June 21st, 2018. Time is 7 after 5. Could we please have roll call?
Sure. Mr. Craignotti?
Here.
Mr. Doom?
Here.
Mr. Morgan?
Here.
Madam Chair,
Here.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, item 2 is the report report of the posting of the agenda. This was posted on or before Monday, June 18th on the bulletin board outside of City Hall. Item 3 is the approval of the meeting minutes from May 17th. And with that, do I have any comments or corrections on those?
I have no corrections. Move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Doom?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you were
Abstain.
acting? Commissioner Craignotti?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion to pass.
Okay, item 4 is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. The speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there'll be no debate or decision. And under this, we've got one speaker card, Sean Bursell.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Commission. My name is Sean Bursell, and I'm here on behalf of the Casa Verdugo Historic District Committee to ask you to request staff to move forward with the Historic District Survey for the proposed Casa Verdugo Historic District. Now, we submitted our application on April 13th of last year. This commission preliminarily determined the district to be eligible for designation in August of last year, and then we circulated petitions in the neighborhood and submitted those, and on December 7th of 2017, this commission certified the petitions that we had a sufficient number to move forward with the next step, which was conducting a historic district survey. Since that time, however, so we've been waiting more than 6 months for the RFP for the historic district survey to be issued. Now, and I'm not authorized to speak for the applicants for the South Cumberland Heights Historic District, but I know they are frustrated as well by the lack of action on the survey for their proposed district. Now, the Casa Verdugo Historic District Committee realizes that staff resources are limited and that there are many other demands on their time. However, we can't help but notice that other projects that arose after our petitions were certified have been worked on by staff and moved forward. Yet it seems that Casa Verdugo keeps getting pushed to the back burner. And that's not fair to the 45% of property owners in the proposed district who, following the process outlined by the city, submitted petitions asking for a historic district survey of Casa Verdugo. It is also unfair to not only those 45%, but to all the property owners in the proposed district. People are entitled to know in a timely manner whether their property is a contributor or a contributor, and thus what rules will apply to them. So I respectfully request on behalf of the Casa Verdugo Historic District Committee that this commission request staff to move forward with the survey, with the request for proposals for the survey for the historic district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, no other speaker cards, so we'll move on to number 5 unless, Jay, do you want to offer any update at this time? Or
We have been moving forward on the RFP. We are stretched for time, and yes, other projects do take precedence sometimes. I can't really address it specifically. We're doing our best.
Okay.
So, I can say, based on the limited time I've been able to work on it over the last month, that I'm shooting for July for release of the RFP. That doesn't mean it will be July. I can't promise that because it's amazing how many things come up, both through design and preservation. So.
Thank you. Okay, item 5, any comments from commissioners?
I have 3.
Proceed.
The first, This last Saturday, the Crescenta Valley celebrated the 50th anniversary of the dedication of the Montrose Vietnam Memorial. I would like to thank all the families, residents, and civic officials who showed up for the commemoration, including the Memorial Committee, who put on a very moving and respectful rededication of the memorial. There were booklets handed out about the 24 names on the memorial. Memorial. There are some of these booklets left, and if you would like one, please contact the Crescenta Valley Chamber of Commerce. Next is kind of a housekeeping one. As you know, the Los Angeles Times is moving out of their historic building. One of the things not moving are about 80 bound volumes of the Glendale News Press from about 1930 to 1950. We're looking for a place to store them so they will not be thrown away. If you have such a place, please let either Sean Bursell at the Glendale Historical Society or myself at cvhistory.org so that we can preserve them until they can find a new home. And finally, the last thing is on Gina. It is with great shock and sadness I announce the passing of a great historic preservationist, Gina Zamparelli. Gina was a historic preservation force of nature, a real Wonder Woman. I first met Gina in 2005 when a historic gemstone, Weatherwold Castle, was about to be bulldozed. The developer had already cut down the many 80-year-old oak trees and had bulldozed the backyard and 1/3 of the property, taking with it many historic structures. The next morning, we were prepared to link arms to keep the castle from suffering the same fate in the coming morning. But we did not reckon with Gina's talents, nor did the developer. In the night, Gina, whose day job was a rock promoter and manager, contacted all the TV station newsrooms, come see the preservationists linking arms against the developers' bulldozers to save a castle. Needless to say, it was an early morning news director's dream. We had 5 news station vans and 3 helicopters by 6 a.m. at Weatherwold. Not knowing what to do with all the reporters milling about, the job foreman contacted the developer, who told him not to proceed with the demolition. That brief respite gave the city time to pull permits and found that the developer had none. Naturally, Gina and I had then to gather up 1,100 petitions given to LA City Council person Wendy Gruhl. The castle went to the Cultural Heritage Commission in Los Angeles and was declared a cultural landmark. And it was at this time that Gina and I met Jay Platt for the first time when he worked for the LA Conservancy, giving us advice. Gina also saved part of her beloved Raymond Theater, was on the board of Hollywood Heritage, and worked with the Friends of Rockhaven, and much more. She was my friend. Now here's the hard part, saying goodbye to this dynamic woman. So I won't, but I would be honored to adjourn this meeting in Gina Zamparelli's name. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
First, I'd like to quickly follow up with staff. Jay, I know the department is stretched very, very thin. And it sounds like the petitions for Casa Verdugo were certified in December. And I know I've asked this so many times over the past year at least. Is there going to be any, I understand at least one position was going to be brought on board, or are you guys getting?
We're
relief
bringing new
on
staff
funding?
on board. I don't know that any of them will be historic preservation trained, so.
So do we need to direct comments to city council, city manager? Do you have suggestions? Am I putting you on the spot here?
Free to approach whoever you like. No one here will complain. So. Things are looking better. The new city manager has heard concerns about our staffing in general. They're being addressed. We're all hopeful that it's going to get better. And, you know, any shift in workload is going to help preservation. The majority of my time is not preservation focused anymore. Deepika has been a huge help working on things. In terms of the RFP, we've taken it as far as we can. There's some things that I just need to keep working on to get it right. It's a little different than others because it's a dual RFP. And I think it will, I think we're on track for a July release. but probably later than earlier.
And then once it
So,
goes
so yeah,
out-
but in terms of staffing, things do look better than they did 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all happy about that, and we have to wait and see how it plays out.
Okay, but it doesn't hurt to keep saying something to whoever we run into. And then once the RFP goes out, can you remind me or us, how long does it usually take to go through the selection process?
We in the RFP, we have a deadline for bidders to respond.
Mm-hmm.
We usually give, I think, 3 or 4 weeks for that. Then we have a process where we go through, depending on how many bids go in, we'll gather several staff members together to review the bids. We put together kind of a scoring chart so that we're all kind of on the same page in what we're looking for. We meet internally to determine who the preferred bidder is, and then we take that bid to council for authorization.
Okay,
And council is dark through most of July, I believe. So that's a good month for us to get our part done, and then hopefully we can get to council August, September.
yeah, I think the next 3 weeks they're not meeting, starting this past week. Okay, thank you for that. And then I just had a quick question. 750 West Kenneth, we reviewed at the last meeting, and that was the tear down of the tear down and
The
rebuild
garage
of the
and
garage.
construction of the garage.
Has that gone to DRB yet?
That's not going to go to DRB. We're taking your, the advice or the conditions that you apply, the recommended conditions that you applied to it, and we're applying those to an administrative design review permit. There wasn't a lot of value gained through the DRB. We can still take public testimony through the ADR process, and so the decision was made to go that way.
Oh, okay, and I'm
But
sorry, was
but
this
but we're
just-
taking the dormer off of the back.
Right.
We're doing everything that you recommended, so.
Oh, okay, great. And if I missed that at the last meeting, I do appreciate that process. Okay, that's it for me, thank you.
Anyone
Thank you.
else? Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to item 6, old business. And seeing that there's none, we move to item 7, new business. A is 1330 North Louise, Elliott House, Glendale Register property number 40. This is review of proposal to construct a pool, deck, and pergola at the rear yard, alter the rear facade door and window opening, and convert the garage into an accessory dwelling unit.
So before Kathy Duarte starts her presentation, she's the case planner for this project, I just wanted to introduce it. I believe, I assume, and I hope you all know the Elliott House, which is one of our fine specimens of craftsman architecture in Glendale. The current owners have a proposal that is doing what we think is a lot of good work, some of which we would have been able to approve without bringing it to the commission. So there are 2 things that led to the commission hearing. One is the accessory dwelling unit, which in general is not to be reviewed by boards and commissions. Because this property has a Mills Act, we felt it was appropriate, since it's kind of a new world for us, to bring it to the commission. That doesn't mean that every ADU will always come to the commission, because the goal of the ordinance and the state law is to avoid this. But this will give us, just as with DRB, we at staff learn from decisions made by boards and commissions, and then we can apply those to future cases. If you think something's acceptable, or if you think something isn't acceptable, we can work with that in the future. So we'll have discretion to not bring every ADU to you, but we thought this was a good opportunity. In addition, there were several landscape changes at the rear facade that we think are completely appropriate and very well done, but they're pushing the envelope, not really pushing the envelope, but they're going a little further than what we would necessarily see for some of this work, so we thought it was appropriate for you to review that also. That's why we're here, for some things that, in general, a pool, even on a Mills Act property, wouldn't be subject to your review. We'd be able to handle that at staff level. So that's that.
Thanks, Jay.
Mhm.
Okay. A little more detail about, is this on? About the work proposed. They're proposing, as noted, to construct the new pool, spa, the pergola and deck, the stone fireplace and decking between the house and the proposed accessory dwelling unit, which we refer to as ADU for short term. They're proposing to add French doors and eliminate one window at the main house laundry room, which is located on the east elevation of the house. They're proposing to convert the existing detached garage into a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and closet for the accessory dwelling unit, and then add 156 square feet to the existing garage to provide a new bedroom for the ADU. The existing garage doors will remain in place to create a wall. The accessory dwelling unit will have a new transom window on the east side of the historic garage. They're proposing to remove the window on the north side of the existing garage and replace it, or just reuse it, on the north side of the accessory dwelling unit. And then, as noted, they're proposing to redo some of the landscaping with drought-tolerant landscaping. And just to go back, the property is located, it's 14,025 square feet at the northeast corner of Louise Street and East Mountain Street in the R1 floor area ratio District 2 zone. It was originally developed in 1915 in the Craftsman style. The house was originally developed. The subject property features a 3,059 square foot, two-story single-family house with a detached two-car garage that is accessed from East Mountain Street. As Jay noted, the property is listed on the Glendale Register is in 2002 and is a Mills Act property. It is also located within the proposed Casa Verdugo Historic District. The garage conversion meets the requirements of the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which limits the amount of square footage to 600 square feet per our code. And then it will also provide the necessary parking, or there is a necessary parking provided on site for the accessory dwelling unit. The house was, well, maybe we won't go over all the history. No? Okay. So staff is recommending approval with conditions. If you want me to, I can go through all of our findings. Yes, in this, okay. In terms of site planning, staff feels that the site planning is appropriate. The new pool, spa deck, and fireplace will maintain the open appearance of the existing yard. The site plan will remain similar to the existing site plan due to the modest addition of the bedroom for the ADU. And that also faces the rear of the property and will not be visible from the street. The garage will continue to appear as a garage from the street, and as the existing garage doors will remain. No changes are proposed to the existing driveway and fence. And the landscape palette is appropriate to the style of the property. In terms of mass and scale, the mass and scale, the proposed pergola and outdoor fireplace and small one-story addition at the rear of the proposed ADU will be compatible with the existing structures and surrounding houses. The addition is well articulated and follows the stylistic logic of the existing garage. The bedroom addition will be subordinate to the existing garage and the proposed ADU, with its east-west wall setback from the adjoining existing walls and its roof being lower than the adjacent roof of the same pitch. As noted, the addition will not be visible from the street and will not impact the overall mass or scale of the proposed ADU. In terms of design and detailing, we feel it's also appropriate. The cedar pergola, okay, and Riverstone outdoor fireplace complement the craftsman style architecture while being of clearly contemporary construction. The garage conversion and addition, as well as the new French doors on the house, will be architecturally compatible with the existing craftsman style house. The new window on the east wall, the proposed ADU, will be appropriate to the new style, to the style and period of the garage. And there's a long list if you still want me to go through all of them. The window on the north side of the existing garage, as mentioned, will be reused on the proposed accessory dwelling unit on that same north side. The accessory ADU addition will be clad with horizontal wood lap siding, differentiating it from the single shingle siding of the house and garage while remaining true to the Craftsman style. And the slate color asphalt shingle roof will match the existing roof. As mentioned, the sliding garage doors will be reused and converted into a wall system within the existing opening. This will maintain the historic fabric and the garage's appearance as seen from the street. The design of the pool and decks features an appropriately contemporary design rooted in the Craftsman aesthetic. And the new concrete paving and scoring pattern will closely match the historic concrete paving on the property. The new wood deck next to the pool would not be a feature of the Craftsman era, which is true of the pool itself, but clearly reflects the time of its construction and will not diminish the historic character of the property. And as noted, there's no change to the driveway. Are you going over the...
I'll ask. But we also do, as Secretary of the Interior's Rehabilitation Standards Analysis. Do you want us to go over that?
I think it's helpful.
All right. Several of these aren't applicable. Condition 1, it's clear that the house will retain its ongoing use as a single-family residence. No historic condition, or I'm sorry, in Standard 2, only a limited amount of historic fabric is being removed, and none of that is important character-defining features. So the alterations are in keeping with the modest removals that accompany additions and changes to historic structures, so we believe it meets that standard. Standard 3 is that changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings, should not be undertaken. We think this project does a very good job of differentiating the old and the new, and isn't doing work that's conjectural, although some of the new work looks like Craftsman work, and we think that's appropriate. It's kind of a fine line, and there's some latitude in how a designer works that, and we think Mr. Cordova's done a good job on this. Standard 4 talks about changes over time and how sometimes those can acquire their own significance. When I first saw the brickwork in the backyard, I said, wow, I haven't seen brickwork like that. Clearly, it's not of the Craftsman period. Someone did something at some point that's kind of cool. But kind of cool for me doesn't mean it's acquired significance. It's just kind of interesting. So we didn't feel that there was any reason that that needed to be preserved. So we were okay finding that this met Standard 4. Standard 5 calls for distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques and craftsmanship that characterize the property to be preserved. We think that's happening here, and the project meets that standard. Standards 6, 7, and 8 really aren't applicable to this. I won't cover those. If you're okay with that. Standard 9 and 10 are the two that are really the critical ones when we talk about kind of major alterations to historic properties. In both cases, we think this project meets these. The addition to the garage is modest in scale, deferential to the form and mass of the garage. The materials are differentiated so that there'll be no confusion between the old shingled facades and then the new sided facades. The aspects of the roof line are being preserved because the ridge line and the height of the addition is lower than the existing roof. So I think this is an exceptional design for this kind of project in terms of making this more useful, making it a real accessory unit, while also preserving the character of the structure. So in the staff's opinion, this meets Standard 9. And then in terms of Standard 10, and that's focusing mostly on the ADU, the flat work and pool, I think are kind of a different story, and I think those also are acceptable in this setting. Standard 10 is the reversibility kind of standard, where if something were removed in the future, could the project be brought back to its former appearance? I think that would be relatively easy to do here, especially since the window at the rear of the garage currently is, I believe, a historic window that's being removed and then relocated to the new opening on the addition. So even at that level, that window could then be put back if the addition were ever torn down. So we're very comfortable that this meets the standards.
Want to talk about your condition?
The condition was just, in looking at the drawings, there's the garage. I'll show you the images. We have, for your reference, if you want to come back to any of these images, sometimes it's easier than looking behind you, and it's easier for the people in the audience. The house and the garage have these kind of flared peaks that are a distinctive feature of the property. And sometimes GTV 6 doesn't like that, so we'll see if they call us. The flared peaks are on the garage, as you can see, and that just didn't make its way to the drawing, so it's a simple drawing error. We just like to catch things like that so no one in the field would look at it and say, well, that's not on the drawing, so we're going to chop it off or something. I don't think anyone would do that in this case, but we just like to be careful. So, and that was the only condition that we placed on this.
And just for the record, on the staff report exhibits, there's really only one exhibit, which was the reduced set of plans, just for the record.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff before we open up the public session? We've got 2 speaker cards. Oh. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Okay, we'll open the public hearing, and the first speaker card is Michael Tunjan.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks to Jay and Kathy for all the work that it took to bring this to all of you. Thanks to you for your consideration. I'm one of the homeowners at 1330 North Louise, and we're just really excited. You know, we have lived in Glendale for the past 5 years. We lived on Mountain Street, farther up in a 1964 mid-century house, and we would walk by this house all the time on our walks down to the library, to the grocery store with our little. He was 6 months old at the time. He was a very little baby at the time. We saw this house and we thought, oh man, this is a great spot. We'd love to live in this house one day. And then lo and behold, it came up on the market 6 months ago, and we got lucky enough to actually be able to buy the house. So we're thrilled with the house. We're excited about the Casa Verdugo consideration for the actual space itself, that section of town, and we're really excited about the work that Dan has helped us create, and that we've been able to present to Jay and Kathy. You know, we have a small son, and the outdoor space is really ideal for him if we're able to move this project forward, to have both some play space in the grass, to have a pool, to have a pergola, and some outdoor dining space as well. Our parents both come out maybe more often than anybody we'd like them to all the time, but the space in the back.
This is on
Are they
TV.
watching?
No, thankfully. But no, our parents come out quite often, and so we'd hope to use that accessory dwelling unit as space for them to have their own sort of space outside the house. John's a writer on television, and so there's times when I think he would also maybe use that as an office space as well. So we've taken great care, and I think trying to prepare something that's appropriate for the historic significance of this house, and are really excited to carry on the tradition of the L8 house for years to come. So thank you all for consideration. Thanks again for the preparation, and thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker card is Daniel Cordova.
Hello, everybody. I'm the designer architect that's been producing these drawings for John and Michael, and it's been an amazing opportunity to work on such a significant historical property in Glendale. It's the first opportunity I've had to work on this side of town. I've done a lot of historical preservation in Hancock Park and Windsor Square, and all of those areas, so I'm familiar with the idea of preserving while still making the homes more livable for modern families without destroying them. And I hope that our design met those standards. I feel like Jay and I worked well together, along with Kathy, and Deepika, she was very helpful as well, to understand what is valued in Glendale and what parts of changing the property would be acceptable and what wouldn't. And hopefully what we've shown you is something that will stand the test of time, not look like it's out of place, and add value to the neighborhood and keep that house feeling authentic. So I don't know if you have any questions for me. That's my comment.
I think we do.
Okay, great.
Do you have any? Or
I do.
all right, then go first.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, feel free.
I just had a quick question on the pool.
that pool, and what would that look
The pool is going to be, there's actually, right behind you on the middle section of drawings, there's a detail showing a thick concrete curb with brickwork underneath it. That's what the outside of the pool is going to look like. And then the inside is just going to have a nice plaster, French gray plaster that comes up to meet a very simple pool coping tile, maybe 4 inches of ply. Yeah, we're not doing any mosaics or glittery stuff to contradict, but the idea, yeah, for sure. The idea was to keep that, this concrete detail actually occurs in the front of the house and in multiple places around, and it just has a really nice substance to it. So we wanted to echo that with the newer pool to make it feel like perhaps it was there originally, and not make it feel like this new modern block in the middle of the yard.
And then the raised hot tub area will probably be the same sort of articulation, sort of like a raised concrete.
Yeah. So the coping on the pool will stay at, I think it's 12 inches above grade. So the pool is pulled up out of the ground slightly. And then it terminates to the face of the spa wall. And I think you can kind of see it in that printout right above the lantern. You'll see the lower concrete coping continues up the face and then across the top of the hot tub. So it's one continuous piece, feeling like the original architecture of the house, or trying to at least.
But was there reference to spa pooling into or spilling into the pool?
Yeah.
So is that all just plaster, no tile work at all?
That will be plaster on the splash side. So as it overflows into the pool, that'll all be, the face of that will be plaster, but on the inside of the hot tub and the inside of the pool, there's going to be a splash tile where the water line undulates, as it's just sitting there. I think there's no need to have the splash face tiled because it'll just call too much attention to that one feature.
But the tile hasn't been selected yet?
No, we were going to just do something that blends right into the plaster. So we're proposing a French gray plaster, which turns the pool kind of like a deep blue color, and we were just going to pick a blue, either ceramic tile or milk glass tile that looks similar in color.
And then I just had a quick question that I think I might haven't really noticed, your fountain inspiration. So that's clearly a new water feature,
Yeah.
right? And is your inspiration what it's going to look like?
That's the intent. That's an item we put on as a nice to have. We're not sure if budget will allow that feature. If we do end up going for that piece, it would be a cast stone trough. So, did I-
No, it's my fault. My microphone was off the whole time.
Oh.
Darn it. We need to start over.
Just to recap, you asked about whether there'll be tile around the pool. The answer was no. The hot tub will also have a concrete coping, but at the spillover area, Commissioner Shire and Commissioner Vartanian asked about the spillover area, and there will be some sort of splash tile in that area that matches the color of the stuck or the coating of the pool. And then you asked about the freestanding fountain feature, and that's where
we are.
Buzzed in.
But I believe there might be a correction. I think there's only tile on the water line,
Right.
not on the spillover from spa to pool.
Yeah, I have
Oh,
my notes.
Okay, so your fountain is on the wish list.
Yeah, and if we end up moving forward with the fountain, we would want it to be in the approval set from the commission, obviously, and it would be in that style, which would be a precast trough of some sort, and a freestanding spout that drips into it. And most of that is just to help reduce the road noise off of Mountain, so that you feel a bit more in your own private backyard and not out on the street. So.
Thank you. I think that's all I have for now.
I have one question.
Sure.
On the house itself, where you're putting in the French doors, the main house laundry room, is there a reason why you decided to do that?
Eventually, I think there's going to be a kitchen remodel, and so we want to get all exterior changes that would happen to the house in front of the board for approval and recommendation. Right now, the kitchen is a very small, sort of L shape, set behind the existing laundry room. And it's gone through many renovations. There's actually, on the other side of the window that's shown in that picture, a pair of windows that at some point were closed over that face into the inner courtyard where the two wings of the house face each other. It's hard to describe, but it's a little
See it-
tiny.
You can see it here.
Yeah, this
These-
area.
These doors here. This is the work area on this
Yeah,
side.
exactly.
These are the existing French doors.
Yeah, and so that whole wing on the right-hand side is kitchen, laundry, and lots of pantry space. More pantry space than anybody really needs. So, been through a few changes over the years. You can tell there's probably a 1940s renovation, a 70s renovation, and now there's like a 2000 renovation with just simple, inexpensive cabinets. And at some point, that would want to be revamped and refreshed. And so, with that idea, having a pair of French doors that would open on center with the volume coming off the back of the house, it seems to be a more pleasing architectural feature than a lopsided single door with an odd window to the right.
Do you feel the original door and the window were there, or is that sometime they might have done a
I think
renovation?
the door could have been, it looks like it matches all of the original doors. The window, however, doesn't seem original. It is not in the same material, the wood frame, and the dimensions of the wood frame are much narrower. I think that was part of either a 60s or 70s renovation. The windows along the back side of that look over the washer and dryer, you can see it on the right-hand picture. Those are definitely not original either. And so I think what they did was when they converted that space into whatever it is, they popped those windows on the north side and they added that little piece onto the door. So those would just,
For function of that room, is there a way you could keep the original door and put a more appropriate window in, or what are you actually trying to achieve by taking out, original features to the house?
well, I'm actually hoping to, if we can figure out how, and we have a pretty good idea, would be to actually use that existing door and create another leaf to make that a French pear. So I would use the existing, I think it's a left hinged door that's there, and just move it over, and then just fabricate another pair to be the acting door on the right. From the inside of the room, it feels odd. It's either I don't feel like there either should be a door there at all, or there is a door, it should be centered in the volume. And this one is kind of not quite centered, and it doesn't seem appropriate with the way it swings in to the left. So ideally, we would be able to make it more architecturally compatible with the rest of the house and center a pair of doors on that opening. That one door is not original? Okay. Well, it's not original for the homeowners, so.
Do you have any more questions?
No.
Good. Okay, I have a couple more.
Sure.
On the ADU, there's a window over the kind of the kitchen area, the kitchen sink area. Is that like a boxed window, a bay window? Is that
It's a transom window. So the idea is it flips up, and then you kind of get it out of your way, and you have a pass-through from the deck area into the kitchen of the ADU.
I think the confusion is the drawing shows it in the horizontal position as if it were
is
just
that what it's
out.
doing?
Yeah, that shows the swing, of the, it
Okay.
should be dashed in so that in the open position
Yes.
it swings out and up.
Yeah, we were confused by that, and then we
Thank
figured,
you
oh, I
for
see.
clarifying
Okay.
that.
So-
Sorry about that.
Okay. And then let's talk about the roof a little bit. So one of the conditions staff mentioned was that obviously that the detailing of the roof would remain.
Mhm.
Are you planning to, on the ADU, replicate that detailing?
Yes and no. I think if that's what Jay is recommending, we definitely will. At one point, there was discussion.
Well, that's something we should clarify.
What's that?
Yeah, well, we don't think the flare should be on the
New addition.
yeah.
Just keeping it on
Just
the
make
garage,
sure
yeah.
it's shown on the drawings for
So
the
that was
old.
my confusion from this meeting was
Yeah.
the recommendation is to update the drawing showing the existing pitch on the garage, but I'm omitting it on the small addition off of the house so that that looks
You're leaving the drawings as they are on the addition. You're just adding the
Correct.
detail to the existing.
correct.
That's
Yeah. So the
definitely-
flare
That's
will
what
be
we're
just on the
asking for.
garage top.
Thank you. Oh, how are you handling the code requirements for the pool safety?
We are pricing out a pool cover, and then we're also going to do a splash monitor. So there's the electronic monitoring system that you can put in so that if anything of a certain size creates a wave, it sets off an alarm.
And that meets code today?
Yeah,
We have Glendale code?
I believe so.
Okay.
And if
Yeah,
not, we
make
will.
sure.
Glendale code may be a little stricter than that,
Okay.
but that will be worked out regardless of,
Okay.
even if it's a temporary fence
Okay.
until the child's a certain age or however that works. So.
Yeah, I don't think age matters. I mean, it's protection, like for the
Well,
pool.
we
if you have a
have-
pool at some
It
level.
is?
Well,
Yeah.
I had to do it.
My
I don't have
friends
any
just
kids.
took theirs out in Los Angeles.
There's a lot going on with
Yeah,
those
LA
neighbors.
might- I
We
don't
talk
know.
about them a lot.
Yeah.
We do have
Yeah.
swinging gates around the perimeter of the fence that are over 5 feet that are self-closing. So the property itself
Yes, the
is sealed.
property, but from the ADU to the house, there's no protection unless you're putting in,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
cupboards or.
In the past, we've allowed door alarms for all the doors that exit to the rear yard, so there are different ways that building and safety has for that.
I think that's in addition too.
What's it?
I think that's in addition to, though.
Right, no, it would be door monitor,
Yeah, yeah.
splash monitor,
Yeah.
whatever else, so.
Okay. I had, it would be helpful just for future in the drawings. I know we're looking at a reduced set, but the scale on the title block of the drawings is varying and not related to the elements themselves on the
Okay.
page. So you've got like scale 1/4 inch on one that's actually a larger plan than 1/2 inch
My
on the other,
apologies.
so-
Yeah, I think I missed
then-
those updates.
Yeah, A 3.3, that your leader lines for the existing door and the new door location are not
Which
in the
one is
appropriate.
A3.3? Oh, okay.
They're going into just the sideboard, not the door.
Oh, okay. My
Just-
apologies again.
Just
Let's
details.
talk about the casing of the door.
Not that one, go lower.
3.3.
The bottom two?
Oh, existing door that's actually a shingle, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, it's pointing to the shingle.
Those
instead
two
of-
leader
yeah.
lines.
Right.
Let me just see what else. I think I had one more question. Oh, no, I think you answered that. I think you covered them.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the architect?
Another question with the door. So
Yeah.
the door that is there, that you're going to put the French doors in,
Mhm.
it's not original. Are most of the doors on the house original? Unfortunately, I couldn't be there on Saturday because of the funeral, but
I thought it was. It's a convincing replica if it isn't original, which is, it's a nice looking door. Nicely made, solid. It has single pane glass. It matches the style of the doors around the interior of the courtyard. And the weight is nice, and it has a nice old lock set to it. So it's a convincing replica, and I would just as soon keep that one and duplicate it rather than rip that out and put in a whole new pair of, newly made doors. I try to maintain rather than dispose of stuff as much as possible. But I would have to go back and check to see if there's any documentation of if that was added at a certain
But-
time.
the other doors that are on the house itself, they're original?
To my understanding, I think they are, yeah. Unless they were at some point rehabbed or replaced in kind. But they all look of the similar style and structure.
Okay, thank you.
And just for the commission's information, if that's of concern, you can add a condition that staff will visit the site, review the existing doors, and work with the architect. If you're open to the idea of changing that facade and adding the 2 French doors, you could condition that we work together to make sure that we're getting kind of the right detailing and all that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great.
We'll close the public hearing. Any discussion among commissioners?
Well, to begin with, I was concerned about the door and replacing it because we have been very strict on what you can and can't remove and keeping something that was original. But if it appears that the door that is in there now is not original, not the door itself, but the spot on the wall is not original, that it could have been moved at any time, it's not as great a concern as it would have been. Otherwise, I would have voted to keep it there where it is. But if it looks like they moved the door over at some other time, like the side window also, the south-facing window, which I guess are not original to the property itself. It's not as great a concern.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
Yeah. I mean, is that something staff had looked at or no?
Whether the doors are original,
Not so much the door, but the the existing elevation south windows.
the side here, these two,
No, that's east facing.
or I don't know.
Do you mean
which-
north facing? Do you mean these? I
Those,
think these
yeah.
are north facing, the
No,
ones
'cause it
over the
says
Washington.
South facing is down here. So, oh, if I may have totally just screwed up on the,
Thank you, Jay.
direction. So,
Thank you.
So the ones around the corner from
we're,
that.
this would be the east facade. This is
Yeah.
the area we're talking about.
He's curious about the two windows that are around the corner from that.
Down.
Nope, other side.
Up here.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't look at those. So.
I mean, there's a picture of them, but he's just wondering about it.
Well, my concern is if it's already been replaced and you can't recreate something that hasn't been there when this thing in 2002 was put on the GR.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if they, sometime in the last 50 years, they reworked that whole back end of the house itself. So I'm just, at first, I would like to keep it the way it originally was, but if it looks like it never was originally that way, it's not as great a concern whether putting in a French doors or not.
Well, even if this was an original door in the original configuration, you're well within your purview to approve a change to that. And I would argue that no character-defining features would be lost here, especially if the new door is going to replicate the historic doors. So, so I'm not sure that would be an issue even in that scenario. So here, I don't think it's a
Okay.
problem.
We could put the condition like you recommended, having staff check out the doors and
Yeah,
evaluate
that would be.
and work with the owner.
So I guess my thought on that would be that if this were the original articulation and that were the original entry door to the service porch, just a simple door entry to a service porch, and we change it to French doors for presumably aesthetic purposes, and we are changing the rhythm of that side of the house, which
Which is-
basically reflects what the uses of those
And that's
rooms
why,
were.
of the 4 sets of standards that the Secretary of the Interior produces, rehabilitation is the loosest in terms of allowing changes to reflect modern usage. So this kind of change, I'm very comfortable as well within, just in general, for any preservation project, what's acceptable. But ultimately, you are the deciders of that, so.
So again, I don't know that we're dealing, it sounds like whatever is happening, behind the walls here has changed a lot over time. But Standard 2 reads, the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. So again, I think we can look at it both ways, to your point, right?
Yeah,
That's the
and
standard.
in general, if we're calling this the rear facades are not as privileged as front facades, and they're typically, the great thing about craftsman architecture is you really have beautiful stuff happening all around the building. But even on a house like this, I would argue that it's really the street facades that really have the great aspects of the style, especially with the porch on this house.
Understood, but I think we've always taken the position that we look at our Mills Act properties on a
Correct.
Oh, of course, yeah.
360-degree basis. So I'm just
Oh,
wanna
no,
be
I'm not suggesting otherwise, yeah.
consistent
Yeah.
with how we've looked at things.
I'm just offering that to say
No,
you
no.
might be more comfortable with changes at the backs than the fronts of some of these houses.
Okay. Thank you. So overall, I feel, I appreciate the overall design, and I do feel that it's complementary to the simple yet elegant style of this craftsman house. I think the yard also appears to present a nice balance between hardscape and softscape. Jay, you had made a reference to some of the landscaping in the backyard and without like full, did you have a concern or a thought about some of the plantings, or did I misunderstand you? Did I
No,
not hear
in the
correctly?
staff report you're saying? I don't
I
remember.
thought you had made a comment earlier about a thought on the landscaping. Was I the only
Oh,
one
it was
who
more,
heard that?
it was more about the wood deck. It's kind of unusual to have a wood deck. Anything under 18 inches doesn't even need a permit, but again, we're looking at this project as a whole. And so that would be, craftsman houses didn't have pools. They didn't have wood decking like this kind of wood deck, which is clearly contemporary. But because the house is still the house, and this is definitely ancillary to that, we thought it was totally okay. But in terms of landscape material, we think it's great. Usually, you know, sometimes people are like, well, what species should I use for this style? And it's like, well, I don't know. But you know, you probably wouldn't plant a succulent garden in front of a Craftsman, even though that could look pretty cool. So you probably want things that are a little bushier, a little more flowery kind of things.
Right.
And I think that's what they have here.
Okay, those are my comments for now.
Yeah, go ahead.
What are you going to do with all the brick?
We've closed the public hearing,
Oh,
so you can
darn, I forgot.
discuss among us if you'd like. Did you want to talk to the commissioners about your question?
Do they, I don't know, it's just great old used brick. It's worth 65 cents a piece.
There's gold in them there yards.
It is, used brick is worth a fortune.
Any other comments on the designer? Nick?
No.
No? Okay. Anyone else?
The ADU looks appropriate. So.
Yeah, I just want to say I think it's a great design. I was very impressed by all of it. I love the public hearing is closed, so I can't ask you, but I am curious, maybe I can find out later, whether you've worked on Craftsman houses before, because I think it was I just think it all ties in really, really very well.
Can I say yes or no?
You can nod. No, well, kudos to you. It all looks like it's going to tie in very well. I like the idea that the ADU is going to be separate. We're not going to be trying to match the roof line, all of that stuff. I mean, really, basically, I think staff's very comprehensive report is very good. So I'm in favor of all of it. If we think staff should go out and visit to look at the doors, I can certainly be in support of that, but I think they've done a really good job.
Great, thank you. Any other comments?
Oh,
Well,
Nope.
go ahead. No,
Is there a
please
motion?
offer. Oh,
What's
I
it?
was going to just give a few comments.
Oh,
Unless
of
you had
course.
something to
Oh,
add.
no, I don't.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say thank you very much, especially to the homeowners who are taking such good care of this Glendale Register property, and also the architect designer for your thoughtful work on maintaining what's there and complementing the house very well with the addition and the ADU. So thank you for that. Yeah, I would suggest that we might as well have staff go out and take a look before we lose a potential historic door to the house, just to see what it's like. And
This
so
could delay some other things.
I was. Oh dear!
Sean's
now
already left
Sean
the
will
building,
Be,
so-
Sean will be upset.
Sean is gone.
Jay, you have 30 minutes to go look at your house, and then you got to be back at your desk.
Okay, well, we'll make that happen.
And then, yeah, thank you for clarifying some of the details on the roof and the window. I think with those, I'm comfortable with the design. So with that, do we have a motion?
Yes.
So, are you gonna go?
No, you go for it.
I know, me too. Okay, so I move that the HPC recommends approval of the project with,
Not,
Is
just
that
to
what we're
interrupt,
saying?
it's not a recommendation. You guys are binding.
we
body.
approve.
Yeah.
Okay. That we approve the project with the condition proposed by staff, which is to revise the elevations of the garage to include the flared roof peaks and vertical gable vents, and indicate that these existing features will remain. And that, I think this then won't be a condition, but a recommendation that staff review the tiles that will be used at the
That could be a
splash?
condition.
A condition, okay. A condition that staff review the tiles that are going to be proposed at the pool coping or at the splash tile, and that I guess we'd want the staff to also, how does that work? To review the fountain feature that's going to be installed?
Well, it's
Would
on the
not-
drawings. It seems like a fairly
And it's
simple.
a maybe, so if they move forward with a trough, there doesn't have to be any, I don't know what the review of the project is going to look like.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with the trough that they're proposing, which seems to have a simple spout, that's in the drawings already. If they deviate from that, they're going to have to come to us anyway to approve that. So my sense, and if you want to give us direction on that, that would be great, but I would probably approve any kind of simple simply designed fountain,
Freestanding fountain.
probably that doesn't have a lion's head spouting water or something like that, so, yeah.
Okay, so we're okay leaving that off. And that staff, visit the property to ascertain whether or not the door is an original door. And if it is, what are we saying? That it's going to be retained, or that we're not going to put in French doors?
Oh, no, we're not, I don't think we're going to say don't do French doors. I think it's that door be used.
Yeah, I would say, yeah,
as the pan- as part of the
if it is an original door, they would prepare the second leaf of, that would be a new door, would match the historic door, and then be relocated in the new opening,
Okay.
if that's what you want.
Is that what
Yes,
we're
that's fine.
concurring
And
on?
if it's not a historic door, then they're gonna have two doors that match the historic design of the other doors.
Two new doors. That's
Two new doors.
Okay. I think I
Add
got
that in there
everything.
for us, Jay.
What's that?
Put that in the motion there for us then. You got it right.
Okay, is there?
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Board Member Craignotti,
Yes.
Doom,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Bertanian,
Yes.
and Chair Shire.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations. Okay, on to 7B, 417 East Loraine Street. This is in the proposed Casa Verdugo Historic District. The advisory review of proposal to demolish the attached garage, construct addition at the side and rear, and construct detached garage was continued from the May meeting, and it will now still be continued to July 19th.
Which I realize we should have said at the beginning of the meeting, if you are you here for that item? Oh, great. Okay,
Oh.
that's okay. Yeah. I hate to think you sat here this whole time, so.
Okay, on to 8.
Actually, on that note,
Oh,
though,
yeah.
we want to, I'm not going to be at the July meeting, and Lauren is not going to be at the July meeting, and
I won't know until Monday if I'm there.
Okay,
it might be
we could call a special meeting. This has been continued twice, and staff would feel bad if we had to do that for 2 more months. Could you all send me an email with your anticipated vacation schedules, and then we'll see if we can call a special meeting if it's not going to work? So,
yes.
Special meetings on Thursdays.
it can be other days.
Okay.
I try to do them on Thursdays, but it depends. It's usually only the first and fifth
GCTV.
week that work, and
Yeah.
the first week is the day after the 4th, I think, or the week
Yeah, the
before.
first Thursday is the day after the 4th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't
That
know if
doesn't-
that's going to work, so,
Right.
so
Well, I
we
can
might
do
have to
12th.
find another day. We'll do
Okay.
our best to
We'll
make
email.
it happen, and
Yeah.
hopefully we have a quorum for the
Yes.
date, so.
Okay, 8 is Planning Division updates and informational briefings. 8A, briefing on city policy regarding the applicability of Criterion 5 for the Glendale Register designations.
Okay, this is something we've talked about several times over the last year or so, and it will actually tie into Deepika's discussion for item 8B, because this is something that will now be added to your Historic District Commissioner handbooks, which it seems like all, if not most of you brought. Thank you. So, but focusing on Criterion 5, I've stated this in public hearings before to discuss when we created Criterion 5, why we did it, what the intent was. What we want to do in handing you this policy document is to just put it in writing so that members of the public, members of the Historical Society, anyone who's tempted to use Criterion 5 will know that it's only intended for some very specific uses. So, as you know, in 2012, we went back and looked at the entire Historic Preservation Ordinance. We made many revisions to the document. At that point, and for many years prior, we had 7 criteria for designation. That seemed both redundant and unnecessary. Some of them were actually kind of unnecessary. So we decided to try to merge our system with the California Register and the National Register standards, which are the first 4 criteria that we have, which are worded a little bit differently for Glendale, but very closely follow federal and state standards and criteria. We had some issues, and we still have issues, with craftsman houses being torn down to create multifamily units. in an effort to think, how can we do this little thing to try to give someone the possible incentive to choose not to do that, and to possibly, either save the house as it stands, or save the house, and if it's allowed by zoning, possibly build another unit or 2 units, whatever would be allowed on the site behind the house. We decided to look at this criterion number 5 as a pressure relief valve for properties that aren't eligible for their architecture, have no associations with people or events, but are still nice examples of the early heritage of the city, the early craftsman style, and possibly even pre-craftsman style, that we still have, numerous examples of, but they're kind of sitting ducks when developers look at them. So we thought if we could allow those to be put on the Glendale Register, despite the fact that they don't meet the first 4 criteria, we could then offer them the Mills Act, and that could be an incentive for a developer to save them. So we were very specific in our presentations to Historic Preservation Commission, our presentations to the Planning Commission, and then ultimately to City Council about why we were doing Criterion 5. The language of Criterion 5 is actually very similar to one of the 7 earlier criteria, and it was one of the ones we got rid of because it was so broadly written. And the mistake we made was, and this was under the advisement of the State Preservation Office, they said write it broadly, but we didn't put in the ordinance any explanatory note to say this is an incentive criterion intended for only specific situations. And that was a mistake that we will hopefully be able to rectify when we do our next kind of amendment to the code, but that doesn't, which we will be doing in terms of the demolition deterrence issues that we talked about a couple of months ago. So once we open the code, we can change other things. So I'm hoping that we can, this would be considered kind of a correction. So we should be able to do that sooner than later. But but for now, we just want to make it clear to the commission, to the public, the reason that this was done. So I'll just read in terms of what was presented in the staff report to all of the reviewing bodies, and I won't read the whole thing, but it says the first 4 criteria are directly aligned with the national and state models and employ very similar wording. Then with emphasis, the 5th criterion proposed, which emphasis for your staff report, not in the document, the 5th criterion is proposed to give the commission flexibility in recognizing the contribution that early vernacular structures make to the city's neighborhoods. Many of these may not meet the highest standards called for by the other criteria, but still may be rare reflections of Glendale's early heritage. By potentially allowing such structures to be designated, the criterion could provide owners with an incentive through the Mills Act program to retain buildings that might otherwise be destroyed. So we really mean this to be used when the other 4 criteria do not apply, yet we have an early structure that's intact, and you could think of it as a 6L structure in our surveys, a high integrity 6L structure, maybe even a moderate integrity that could be brought back through some additional work. Possibly even a low integrity. If we're offering the Mills Act, that's an opportunity for us to really bring things into, or just return them to their historic character. So that's the language that we use, that's the language that we want to stand by, and I see a question.
Would this apply to the 1903 Glendale Avenue house that's a 6L?
I don't know which one we're talking
Get on your
about.
Google Maps.
You know, the one that's on Glendale Avenue, it's the one I fought for. It's about,
What's it look like?
it was the
What's
one that you
across
said it
the
was a mishmash. It's a single.
Oh,
it's a
it's the
craft-
one that was converted into a triplex and has enclosed porches and all of that?
No, not on the front.
What's
That's
across
on
the-
Glendale.
about-
It would apply to properties like that. It could apply to a property that we're saying in the survey if the siding had been removed or covered with asbestos siding, if the front porch was, enclosed at some point, staff and the consultant, Historic Resources Group, are saying we don't think those should be 5s. They could be 6Ls. That point hasn't been hashed out yet. That's going to council in July, and we're going to present them, that Historic Preservation Commission and the Historical Society, kind of there's disagreement on that, and we're going to just present it as we haven't figured this out yet. I don't know what the result's going to be with council, but that's how we're presenting it. So, yes, it would apply to a lot of properties that we might be calling 6Ls, And if someone came in and said, listen, I'd love to get the Mills Act, and through that process, I'm going to remove this enclosure around the porch or put appropriate siding on it, that's why we have the Mills Act, and I think that would be a great use of it. So I think I can say that it will apply to that house and lots of others.
Okay.
Get rid of
Any other questions for staff on that?
No.
No, thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
That clarifies that. 8B, discussion of updated materials to be provided at the meeting for commissioners' handbooks.
Here comes Deepika Dalawal. Wait. Microphone.
Microphone.
Oh, hand them out. Okay. You talk, hand. Oh, my. We need new handbooks.
That's the house.
Okay, so we prepared packets with updated materials for your binders, and some of you may have sections that don't need to be updated, some of you may have older ones, so if there are any extras that you don't need, we can take them back, or you can just hold on to them. So I can walk you through the sections that we've updated, and then if you guys have any questions, just let me know. So to begin with, we have a new table of contents. We took out our very last section on the North Glendale context, but you guys are free to set it aside, whatever you guys want to do. And I don't have the old table of contents, but I believe there was a section for the historic district flow chart.
Yes.
We took that out as
14.
well, or we just kind of bundled it into, because it's also in the historic district handbook already, so it was kind of a repeat.
So you're saying our number 14 will now be vacant?
Yeah, that's how our binder is
Yeah.
too, and I kind of reordered, so.
But we're not shifting every number thereafter.
Yeah.
We're just leaving them in their numbers.
Yeah, and I have extra dividers if you guys need as well.
Okay.
So, and then I think the North Glendale context was the last section, or the second to last, maybe?
Oh, yeah, last section, number 20.
Yeah, so that one I also took out. So then the first new section is an updated list of the Glendale Register properties.
Wait, sorry, can I go back for a minute? So the old one, for example, number 14 said historic district process flow chart, and the new 14 is design guidelines for residential
shift.
historic district.
So everything does shift.
You
up.
are shifting everything? Okay, we're not just having 14 vacant.
No.
No, we're
Okay.
just, shifting.
And we gave you dividers, right?
Well, we have dividers in the binder.
Mhm.
You just created us a bit more work, but it's okay.
We have numbered dividers.
We're strong.
No, it's good. We can move all them forward.
And we'll just take out divider 20, it looks like then.
Keep it for the future.
Keep.
Keep that vacant.
Never know.
Okay.
You never know.
And 19.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so just after number 13, things change. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the first new section is an updated Glendale Register list, which we just recently updated up to number 23.
So where does this go? Sorry.
That's section 5.
Oh, it's not going to fit.
Sorry, our printer, we had a lot of printer issues last week. So if you need anything
Okay.
reprinted
No
or
problem.
whatnot, I can bring it to the next hearing.
Oh, no.
It's just that one.
Oh, it's
It's
just
just that one. The other ones are
We have
good.
a
That one
printing
had a-
disaster?
That one had a two-hole, no, it had a two-hole punch instead of a three-hole punch.
It doesn't fit the.
Or a section 5.
Oh.
It just had
Sorry,
a two-hole punch, but that's okay. It's okay.
I can reprint it for the.
We can,
No, just
we can.
punch new holes.
punch 'em.
Okay, just put it
Yeah,
in
then
there.
we'll have a 5-hole punch.
Okay, so are you saying 6 replaces 6 in its entirety?
6.
Glendale Register.
Oh,
Section 6?
that's section 5.
Well, not this one. It says 6.
This,
Sorry, the
DPR
two
form.
Those are
holes.
DPR, okay, so
we've moved
section
on.
5 is just the list.
Yes.
Section
Yes.
6 is the DPR forms.
Yes.
And it says starting with GR 89. What is that?
So that's what in our binders, we had DPR forms up to Glendale Register number 89. I don't know if you guys are, if you have older ones or you have more recent ones and you don't need all of them, you can give them back to me. Or if you're missing any before 89, let me know and I can print them for you. So I just went based off of what was in our binder. So ours were 89 and onwards. So you have DPR forms for number 89 to 123.
So mine starts with the Verdugo Adobe.
Number one.
I don't even have those.
You don't have anything beyond that?
No, I do.
Oh, what's the?
So you're saying we're adding this to the
Yeah.
back of what's already
right.
here? It's just adding them, okay.
Oh, it is the Adobe,
Got it.
but it's not a TPO form.
Yeah, some of the
Where's the
older
number?
ones aren't.
Oh, yeah, some of
Probably it's really old.
that's the thing, we have different,
I'm just gonna
versions.
I'm sorry, where do I see the number?
Ballswell, it's number 6.
Down here,
10.
on the register. It's like
Where's
some
our
rate.
house?
At the bottom left is the number.
Oh, number 66, so you have a gap, 66
Oh.
to
I
89.
don't have, mine
So this
doesn't
is
have
523B.
We didn't do that.
523A.
So are we ready for the next section? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Number
Uh,
7.
Yeah, number 7
Deal with this later.
is just in the most current Glendale Register application form we're using. I believe some of the old binders had the old criterion where they're letters instead of, where it used to be criterion A, B, C,
Oh, no, it's
instead of
numbers.
the
Okay.
1, 2, 3. So,
Number 9.
yeah, so number 9 is an updated Mills Act application. Number 10 is an updated handbook for researching historic properties. We added in a few resources to that.
So take out the old one.
Yeah.
It's
Quick
entirely.
I think the
question.
cover, yeah, the cover might be different for some.
The old one had the application fee for the Mills Act. The new one doesn't tell us how much.
Yeah,
Right, because it's based.
that was a mistake to put the price on there,
Oh, and Pat,
because,
passed away.
and
Yeah,
that
so
because
that's-
every year it might get raised, so.
Got it.
We're in the process,
We
we're gonna be
just-
updating all our
We just
applications.
didn't want to
There's-
know how much it cost today.
It's a sliding scale today.
That's right. Sorry, Deepika.
Okay, 11.
11 is the 2 policies that, so the first policy is a naming policy, and then the second is the Criterion 5. I printed it to match the naming policy, so it looks a little different from what was prepared for this,
Oh.
the items and materials you guys got in the email. It's the same content, just looks a little different with the city seal and different title, but.
Thank you.
So naming policy in Criterion 5 for section 11.
Oh, mine's old. Mine's got historic district
Overlay
overlay
zone,
zone
HD.
under 11. Is that just really old?
For number 11,
Yeah.
maybe, I guess there was maybe no policy section back then.
This is relating,
Policy for naming properties listed on the Glendale Register.
That
Is
one.
that what you have?
No, I'm with Morgan. on
Section
that.
Yeah,
11
you
is,
got that.
Well,
We got-
you are the 2 longest
We are.
served
We are.
commissioners,
Oh, yeah,
so.
You're all showing your age
older than
now.
mine. I know, no kidding.
so section 11 should be dedicated to any policies that,
Yeah, I think we'll just pull this one out. Oh, it's 12. It should be under 12, Mike.
Should it be?
Yeah,
They handed it to us.
I know. Just move it. Okay.
yeah, so 12, 13, and 14 is all the historic district materials. And then section 15 is the historic district maps. In our binders, we had maps up to Rossmoyne. You guys might have more recent ones than that, but I printed them out starting with Rossmoyne up to Neodrar, so should be
Section 15.
4 new ones.
So these maps all say proposed boundaries. Is
Yeah.
that never changes, right?
We're
You never
talking
end up.
about that.
No, we're lacking GIS skills right now in our department.
What does that stand for?
Oh,
GIS?
Geographic Information Systems. And it's how we create maps. And we have a long-running goal of getting all of our, because you notice all of the districts, the maps some of them look different from others.
Yeah.
We want to ultimately have them all in the same format, and it's,
Great.
when we can, we're going to do that.
Okay, so then the last section to update is the section on the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. Some of you might just have this little condensed list,
Yeah.
but I printed out the entire standard, so you guys have that to add in.
So take this out, those 2 pages?
No, keep them both, yeah,
Okay.
but just, I printed out this for you guys. So
And I'm
you
not
have the
sure they
entire-
need to keep the old one, because shouldn't this, isn't there a one-pager in there?
Oh, maybe in the beginning.
Yeah, I think they're listed in there. And then this.
It might just be easy reference, just to
Yeah,
keep it.
yeah, it could be, yeah. This document is probably more useful to you than most of the others that are in here.
Yeah.
Because this is really useful for interpreting the standards and understanding how to apply them in different situations. So it's something that I go back to sometimes, other people do, and
Section
I
18.
encourage. But yeah,
Yeah.
the
What do you have for
whole-
19?
whole
I
thing
don't
about the
have a
standards.
Neither do I.
Mine skips to 20.
We are old.
No, I don't have a 19 either.
They couldn't
I'm a
count
little
that
younger.
high.
Well, we
We
have,
have a 19 and 20 tab at least.
I
Oh, you
have
the
a tab, but
No, I don't
have
even have a
the
tab.
They don't even have a
But
19.
my
we bought extra
18
tabs for you all in case you need them.
We need a
so.
tab.
20
19
tab?
is
I do have, no.
Why don't we-
No, I do have a 20.
Why don't I suggest that we
Should we
do the
adjourn the
fine
meeting?
tuning? Well, I have one more thing
Well, this
for
has
you.
got to be fun to watch. I mean, come
I'm
on.
sure. There are people who want to go home, but I do have one. If the commission will indulge me, we have one item that is not on the agenda, but I am able to talk about it as an informational issue.
Great.
If you want to discuss it more thoroughly, let me know, and we'll agendize it for next time. But I don't imagine that, because finally, the long-awaited public debut of the Property Information Portal is with us. So I just wanted to demonstrate for you and anyone who's still watching how this works. So the Property Information Portal is a way to access lots and lots of information about properties in Glendale. It's similar to ZMIS in Los Angeles, if you know Los Angeles and ZMIS. Other cities have these kind of databases where you could access information through the internet. And there are a couple of different ways to get to this. So it's peppered throughout the website. So if you go to residents and you look for, it hasn't been branded as well as I imagine it could, but I just found it here. Property information. And I'll back out of this for a second just to show you that it's also available in online services, the section. Property Information Portal, so it has its more formal name here.
I think you can even Google Glendale Property Information Portal. It goes right to that page.
Sure, yeah.
Which is great.
So, I always wish this search box was somewhere else. It doesn't feel right to me, but here we are. When a person is searching for a property, we want them to know whether or not this has been determined to be historic. I always use the following address because it's the first address in our first historic district, and therefore it's always in my memory. So we'll go to 1400 Royal by way of example.
It would be one of the.
No, I just did this today. And
What happened?
Fine. It's not coming up. Damn. That's terrible. This is very embarrassing because I just checked this earlier today
Just to make sure.
with this specific address.
Try another one.
1221 Cortez, we're
1220?
1220.
1221 probably won't get you the result you need.
We have several that we know. Oh, man.
It's after hours and they shut the system
I
down.
I just don't know. No,
That's
I
good
think
because I
it's
was just on
just
this
not
this morning and I was
Okay,
thinking, what
try
could they
the-
possibly different?
Try the one that we had today. The Louise.
No, there's something's going on.
Yeah.
So what should be happening?
Well, we will agendize this for next month to have a
Right.
better discussion.
This is just a precursor to
That's
get
right,
them
to
excited.
whet your
Yeah.
appetites. So what should happen is where the address comes up, it's going to say in red letters, historic, which is
That's if
clickable.
it's a Mills Act property.
It's going to be
Well,
for
register.
Glendale Register, for a Mills Act,
District.
and any property that, for every district contributor and non-contributor and for every property that we have surveys for.
Okay.
So it's going to be a lot of properties.
Try hitting zone.
Would it appear under any of the
No,
other
no,
tabs?
this isn't working, I'm sorry to say.
Because I have seen things on Millsack properties before that says it's not right where you say it, but under zone it says HD.
Trust me, this is not what it's supposed to be doing. There's supposed to be a red historic right over this area. When you click on that, our original goal was to go straight to the DPR survey form for the property. What happens now is you click on historic, and a little window opens up here with a link to a PDF. That PDF is the DPR form for the property. It's going to tell you, you know, there's a picture of it, there's historic information, and there's status codes. What we haven't yet figured out is how to make the status codes understandable to the universe.
Legend.
Yeah, so that's an upcoming thing, but the information's there, and people will know at the very least that it's historic, or considered historic. For example, a non-contributor may not be something we call historic, but it's in a district, we regulate it, so we want people to know. So this is embarrassing, unfortunately, but
Maybe it's just like a web browser, like blocker or pop-ups or something that is not right on this computer.
yeah.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Well, this
can't wait
computer's
till
always
next
given
time.
us trouble,
Bugs in
but
the system.
why not blame the bigger picture? So anyways, I'll put that on the agenda for next month and kind of give you the run-through on that.
Great.
So when
So-
we're accessing it from the internet, are we going into the actual, we're not going into the actual database, are we?
You're going to part of the database. You don't have access to everything.
So
But you- but-
just, I know you probably don't want me to ask this question, but if someone came up to the planning desk, would it be working on the back end for staff, or would
Yeah,
it
it's
not be
it's
working?
internet-based, so
It might not be.
what do you mean?
You're having a glitch right now.
Well, this is brand new. I don't know what's going on. It will be accessible to everyone equally once it's working, so.
Right?
But is the planning desk using a different system or different source for checking?
CSI, the
where
holds in
holds are, right,
CSI
is
are what
different.
most of our staff will be finding. They're not going to be using this on
So
a
that's
regular
different.
basis, yeah.
Like, that's,
This is pulling information. CSI is a huge database that includes licensing and permitting, and fire has stuff in there. It's a big thing.
right.
This pulls out select things. You can find out what zone your property's in. There's a bunch of stuff you'll be finding out about the property. Our focus was just getting the historic in there with the other things, so,
That will be nice.
yeah.
Two questions, or one's a statement, two questions. Number one, already if you click under the zone tab, it will tell you that a house is in a historic district. Number one. Number two, so when you say DPR forms for anything even that's been surveyed, so an issue like where all of North Cumberland Heights was surveyed in 2004 or whatever, but only small districts have been created, all those DPR forms for the houses that are outside the
They're in there already.
would show up.
Yeah, the only thing that's not in there right now is the South Glendale survey,
Right.
because we're not finalized with
done.
that, so,
Okay, and then I think those were the only two things. Thank you.
all right,
Okay.
Thank you.
cool.
Anything else? Well, with that then, we will adjourn the meeting in honor of Gina Zamparelli.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Time is 6:28.